Hi, I'm Ethan Jackson from V100 Topeka's Rock Leader, and I'm excited because I've got Gary Cushinberry on the video line today. Gary, how are you doing?
I am doing well and excited to visit with you.
That's awesome. Now, I'm excited to chat with you because your father, Grant Cushinberry, is being inducted into the 2022 Topeka Business Hall of Fame. And obviously, your father's not with us anymore, passed away a few years back. And so we wanted to chat with you a little bit about your dad and how important is this to you and your family, your father getting the induction to the Hall of Fame?
Well, he's a couple of things, and Dad is still with us. He's just not with us physically. I feel his or his spiritual presence just about every day. When I talk to my kids, my grandkids, I'll find myself saying something that he would have said, and I wouldn't have understood when he said it to me. But it's amazing as time moves on and as you mature, some of the things that you were told when you were younger, they make sense now. You kind of get it. So I like to say he's still with us, just not in the physical presence. Um, but the family's just ecstatic. But first, you'd have to know my dad. My dad really never did anything for accolades. He did it because it was the right thing to do.
Mm.
Um, he was never one for awards and pats on the back. And matter of fact, even if you gave him a pat on the back, he'd ask, "Why aren't you doing it?" One of my favorite stories. He was on the Geraldo Rivera show, and it was a Community Heroes of 1988, and I just had to hold my breath. And Geraldo had the award winners up, and he got to my dad, and he asked my dad, "Why do you do what you do?" And my dad just looked him square in the face as he was towering over Geraldo, looked him square in the face and asked Geraldo, why didn't he do more? And Geraldo just kind of looked at him and said, "Well, Mr. Cushinberry, that's a good question," and just moved on to the next contestant or to the next award winner. So again, like I say, he never did it for accolades, never did it for notoriety. He just did it because he felt that was the right thing to do. And like I say, as a family, we were always excited that a person's name lives on because I think as life goes on, I think you remembered for the things you do, not so much who you are. I could be the best basketball player in the world, and I wasn't. I was probably the best basketball player around, but I wasn't in the world. But that doesn't matter. Being a good basketball player, it just mattered if I was a good human being, and so this award just kind of makes all the Cushinberry family uh, ecstatic about them remembering our dad, uncle, uh, as being the man he was and the giver he was.
That's amazing. I was going through his bio a little bit, and I noticed that he was a co-founder of the Community Thanksgiving Dinner, which still happens every single year. An opportunity for folks to have a nice meal on Thanksgiving, especially if they might not have family to go do that with. Um, and I just thought that that is one of the coolest things. Was that something that he was always very excited about?
Well, he was, yes, when I say excited, he was excited. He was excited because it was opportunity for him, again, opportunity for him to get back. It was work for the rest of us. You have to kind of keep in mind, Dad was the big picture guy, so he had the ideals. And once he got it going, then he was going on to another ideal, and the rest of us had to kind of do the legwork, which was no problem at all because it gave all of us an opportunity uh, to see how blessed we are. Uh, he just felt that for Thanksgiving, he just thought everybody ought to have a hot meal and ought to be around somebody. He didn't think anybody should eat alone. Um, and like I say, Dad was a country boy born in Nicodemus, Kansas, and raised in Hoisington, the Great Bend area around in Barton County. But he was always had his humble beginnings. Um, Even as a child, we sat around a table, we said our blessings, and we all ate as a family. Even though with this hectic schedule, when it was time to eat, we all sat down and ate together. And so I think that was important to him, growing up, and that evolved into him realizing the importance of having a Thanksgiving dinner or having a dinner. Um, where we all could do some fellowship. And originally, I remember it started out pretty small, just kind of some neighborhood folks and folks that he had knew. And Mrs. Johnson had a similar uh, dinner over at the East Side Methodist, a little small church. And they were buds, and so they put their heads together after the first year or two and decided, hey, let's do this thing together. And it just kind of grew from a couple of folks with ideals to what it is today. Um, Dad would always call himself Topeka's number one beggar because he wasn't bashful about asking. It was for a great cause. He would ask anybody for it. Hey, can you help with the Thanksgiving dinner? And if you couldn't donate monetarily, hey, well, we need volunteers. Can you come and help? And it was awful tough to tell him no. And of course, being a son, I could never tell him no. But it was a good lesson for folks, and I think it got a lot of folks in the community thinking that, hey, this is a community deal, and even though he's not here physically, uh, every holiday season, I always think I know that he's up there smiling down and probably organizing a community dinner up there. Uh, and asking people for donations. So no, we are honored as a family for Junior Achievement to announce him as a laureate. So
That's awesome. Is there any advice that he gave you when you were a kid coming up that stuck with you that you would tell younger folks today if they're looking at, whether it's being involved in the community or just chasing their dreams and their future? Is there any advice that he gave you that you give them?
well, Ethan, I don't know if we've got enough time on the show to tell you all the things that he's told me over the years, but one of the main things is do the work. If you put the work in, I was an athlete, and one of his sayings that always stuck with me, he said, the harder he worked, the luckier he got. And so, in essence, it wasn't luck. You put the work in. If you put the work in, then you're going to get the results. And that's whether, on your job or in athletics or just in life. Um, and he always felt anybody could serve. He said, and it's the old Martin Luther King quote that, you don't need a college degree to serve. You don't need suit and tie to serve. You just have to have an open heart and a willingness to serve. And that was always his mantra ever since I can remember. And I always thought it was kind of hokey. But there was a classic example of a guy talking the talk and then walking the walk. As a youngster, I'd hear him talk the talk and think, oh, Dad, here we go. He's telling another story. But that was who he was. He wasn't bashful, and he would talk to everybody the same. Having the waste management company, spend a lot of time in alleys, removing trash, and we would run into some of the less fortunate folks who would be in alleys going through trash cans looking for, and he would engage and interact with them the same way he would engage and interact with the governor of Kansas. Uh, at that time, the governor's mansion was one of the last stop, was a customer of theirs, and that was the last stop until we went to the dump. So we would go from being in the alleys to talking to some less fortunate, to he would go to talking to the governor of the state of Kansas in the same manner. No, didn't talk up, didn't talk down. He met people right where they were. And I think that's a valuable lesson that I think we all can learn from, that we all put our pants on one leg at a time. So nobody is more super or more superior. Uh, it always would say, another little corny saying, he said, we're all just one race. He said, that's the human race. And that was kind of how I was brought up. We didn't see color. And I look at Dad, he was raised during segregation. And so he could have been bitter,
Yeah.
did his military time and came back to a segregated country, but he was never bitter. He was never bitter and never taught us to be bitter. And so consequently, I've had friends all over the spectrum. And when they would come over, he'd welcome them. So again, probably the one is that we're all the same race, and that's the human race. And, as you can tell, I'm kind of bashful, kind of like him. So,
That's great. You know what? I just wish, honestly, that I would have been able to meet him. He sounds awesome.
oh, either he would have talked your ear off. He would have talked your ear off, especially if you'd have got him on the subject. Well, people were his subject. He could
Yep.
talk about people. Um, and like I say, he would never take credit. I can remember him being in his recliner and waking up and having an idea. And I said, "Well, Dad, how are you going to do that?" He said, "Oh, I won't worry about that. That's just the details."
Yeah.
Never worried about the details. He'd have a vision, and he'd talk to a few folks, and pretty soon it'd have legs. And next thing you know, yeah, he got 100 tickets from the Arab Shrine Circus. He talked to the city of Topeka. Now they're sending city buses around picking kids up. Uh, and we'd meet at the city water department right across the street from where we lived on 19th and Fillmore. Uh, Saturday morning, they had opened their big doors, and so the kids could stand inside, and we'd organize. And it was just I wish he would have had a book on how to. He just had a book on, well, this is he was a man of faith, so he had the ideal, and he just figured that the man upstairs would see it through. And more often than not, I can't remember anything that he started that he didn't finish, especially if it was in regards to helping mankind.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We are looking forward to March of next year when your dad gets officially inducted into the Topeka Business Hall of Fame. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Gary.
Well, thank you, Ethan. We are looking forward to March 10th, 2022, to having a roaring good time, and Dad to be there in spirit. And I appreciate all you do. So thank you for doing what you do. We uh, we
Absolutely.
uh,
Thank you, Gary.
we value and appreciate Cumulus.
Appreciate that.